JD talk about writing for studio versus writing for yourself. All
which
right.
is always quite the challenge. Hi, and thanks. I'm JD. Um, so I'm an author by trade, actually. So it kind of makes things a little easier for me. But here we go. So, um, how big that jump in writing for yourself compared to writing for a studio is and isn't, and what you should be aware of if you're going to go for it. So everybody always seems to want to make one of two big leaps, and that's either creating their own super successful visual novel or writing visual novels for one of the bigger companies out there, especially some of the newer and still ever popular Atomic Games and their makers, as we discussed before. Lovestruck is, Voltage is one of the biggest ones out there. And that's great because more stories and more tales to play is better. And who doesn't want to be a part of that, right? But here's the catch. You actually have to know a little something about writing and about writing to deadlines. So sure, yeah, absolutely. When you write for yourself, well, there's no one to please but you until you get that first reader or fan or supporter and or paying customer, which at the end of the day is what we all want. And that's great because you're going to need those if you want to make bigger leaps to working for a studio or even creating your own studio. So the things you need to do either or both with a large degree of success are the same exact things. You need to know how to write. And that means not just tell a story, but to actually create a good sentence, dialogue that sounds real, and yes, words that are spelled correctly. You might be thinking, well, hell, that's what the editors are for. But actually, no. Some editors can and do work with spit polishing grammar and spelling. What they really do is catch issues in storytelling and continuity, ensure that you're pushing the story to be the best it can be. Frankly, when someone's hiring you, they expect you to know how to spell. They expect you to know some basic grammar. They don't want to teach you. And if they have to spend too much time correcting you, you've lost your job. And it's just the way it goes. It's very, very cut and dried that way because they can't waste time correcting your errors. They need to take a game and push it out there as quickly as possible. And you, as a reader, you know, as a player yourself, if things are riddled with errors, you're not interested in it and you don't want to play it. And so when you get to that other side of development, you really need to be on your game. So, by the way, notice I said before that you're about pushing the story to be the best it can be, not you. Because if you're doing this right and you're here listening to this, so I assume that either you already do or you're getting ready to do this well, I mean, then what you want at the end of everything is to have told the best story you possibly could. Working for yourself, that story can be as long or as short as you want it to be. And your timeline in getting it done might not be quite that important, at least not at first, not until you have fans who are like, hey, where's the next one? And we want that again. It's always nice to have fans, have people love your work. And it's all on you. Everything's on you. Your timing is on you. Your story is on you. Whether or not you post, everything's on you. Your story, your timing, and your method of putting it out there. But when you're working for a studio, those three things may change. So let's start with the most obvious, right? It's timing. Now, you may have individually had your own schedule and maybe even been pretty good about keeping it. But all that changes when you're doing a work for hire. You need to complete a word count, error-free, edited, and complete within a certain time frame. And you have to adhere to it. The folks that are paying you get paid by folks purchasing the game, the installment, the whatever it is that's in your hands, waiting on your desktop for you to pop it open and finish it. And if that doesn't get done, it doesn't go out. It doesn't go out, the studio makes no money, whoever hired you gets in trouble, and you will find yourself not employed. The other thing is the writing itself. Many studios will hire you to work on a specific title and a section of it. And you'll find that these stories have already been written, in that the major plot points have already been established. Your job will be to write around that, to fill in the points that bring point A to point B and through to the end. And what I mean by that is, for example, we all know like certain tropes. Well, let's just use the romance trope because it's a big one. It's out there. You know, A meets B, A and B conflict, A and B get together, A and B conflict again, A and B have a happy ending. So the what's written for you is much more specific than that. A and B, first of all, have names. And then the way that they meet will be, all the beats are like, oh, they met at the candy store. At the candy store, they ran into this. After this, they went to a picnic. But at the picnic, they fought. You're going to fill in all that stuff in between. These are called the beats. And you're going to fill in the beats. And a lot of times with these really rapid turnaround studios, that's what you've got. You've got the beats and you get to fill in the spaces. So um, yes, there's a, you have to adjust your writing to the world that's already been created because there's a canon you have to follow. And there is restriction, if you would, in terms of how much creative freedom you have, in that you can't rewrite this world. The world's been established. But here's where your skill as a writer is really called into play. If you view this no differently than you would, say, a school assignment, wherein you're given a specific topic and a certain word count to work with, you can do this because you've already been doing it. And of course, if you're doing an assignment for a grade, then you want to do your best. Working for a studio instead of a grade, you get paid, and hopefully future work as well. Now, it's true, some studios will give you a lot more latitude. For example, they'll give you a concept and some descriptions of perhaps the main character, but otherwise the entire construction of the story is up to you. Even with all this freedom, though, you are still under certain constraints in terms of time and perhaps length as well. In either of these scenarios, your time management skills are the most important part, and hopefully this is something you've developed over time working on your own stories, published or not, no matter what the topic or the genre. So you've decided you know how to write, and you can write to a schedule and even to a topic, but you don't know where to start. Well, all right. First, write. You're already doing it. Keep on writing. Write the things that you want to write. Set yourself a schedule, stick to it, and write. Notice I keep saying write. It's going to keep on coming up. Then you get published. Publish an article, publish a book, create a blog, or some other public forum venue, and be a regular contributor. But get some ink, whether it be virtual or literal. Ink is going to be your CV. And why? Because this way, when you go knocking on a studio's door, you've got something to show them. And what you want to show them is what you've already shown yourself and the world. You know how to write. At the end of the day, though, you want to be certain that whatever you're writing, whoever you're working for, whether it be a rapid turnaround studio, we have time to get this together situation, or this is my pet project, whatever sort of mode, that the first person you write for, and pun partially intended, is you. Enjoy the world you're creating, because even if it's someone else's sandbox you're playing in, at the end of it, only you can build a sandcastle in your style. And that's the most important thing to bring to this. Well, that and your pen or your keyboard. And thanks. That's all I've got to say about that. So feel free to ask questions.
I'm just watching all the reactions going on in chat, and it's like
I
deadlines.
finally got to look at that. I'm looking at it now.
Manage
You
your
guys are
time,
welcome.
right?
That's the only way to get good, is to just, you gotta keep writing. You gotta write. You know, if you guys, anybody wants to go privately with me, or just keep talking about it on Discord with me, or even on Twitter, feel free. You know, I have some really cool tips and tricks to get you writing faster. You know, I see Lightworker. How do you improve prose? Read it. Read a lot of prose. Read the style you like. And then you need to, you know, we are all homages to something else. I don't care what your artwork is. I don't care what your media is. You are inspired by someone. Read what inspires you, and and get moved by it, and then get inspired by it, and start your own stuff. It's okay if you write like someone else. That's totally awesome. That person who you write like is actually, they're flattered. Don't copy them, though. I'm not saying plagiarize. Please don't plagiarize, because then you will earn the enmity of everyone else. But if that's the best way to get better, is to find something you love and then try to do something your own in their style until you develop your own voice, and you will. Let's see, just a guy. When a lot is do anything for exposure. Okay, so there's a real mixed bag with the exposure thing. It really depends. If you're already a pro and you've been getting paid and you need to pay your rent and you need to eat and you'd like to write someplace where the rain doesn't hit you on the head, because that's really bad for your computer, then writing for exposure is bad. People die of exposure. Okay. People, that's the truth. People die of exposure. However, if you have no writing credit at all whatsoever, and your life doesn't depend on it, and I mean that sincerely, if your life doesn't depend on it, there are certain things you will do for exposure. You try not to, because you want to be a professional. But there are certain small things, and it's I would say that if you see something that comes across like that, that's an exposure piece, It really depends on what it is. If it's a quick, I wrote a poem and I put it up there, that's for exposure. You wrote your own story, you put it up there, that's for exposure. That's yours and that's great. But if someone's like, hey, I want you to write for me and I need you to write this ad, or I need you to write this story, or they're asking you to do something that people normally get paid to do, unless it's your favorite charity in the entire world, I would probably avoid doing that. Because that's kind of like being abused. And being taken advantage of. And I don't recommend that. It's uncomfortable at best, and creates some really, really bad situations at worst.
All right, you can certainly continue this in chat. I'm going to hand it off to who's the next person on deck. Tootie. All right,